Hurricane George is bearing down on the central Gulf Coast. People in its path should have taken cover if you haven't already.
And here in Biloxi, a little extra time to take precautions as the hurricane has stalled. But that does not mean that anyone here is out of the woods yet. We'll have a live report in just a moment. Stay tuned.
It's a busy morning in the Gulf. Hello and welcome to Weather Center. I'm Mike Motley. As you just saw, Hurricane George continues to be a real threat. Elsewhere in the country, the Northeast should keep an eye to the sky. And more on that in just a minute. But first, let's turn to Rick Griffin in our forecast center for more on Hurricane George.
Thanks, Mike. Hurricane George bearing steadily towards the north-central Gulf Coast this morning, some 95 miles southeast of the mouth of the Mississippi River. That is the eye of Hurricane George, about 175 miles south of Mobile, Alabama. And the position for you right now, including New Orleans, would put the latest coordinates would put it 190 miles southeast of New Orleans, Louisiana, at 28.3 north and 87.8 west. That's the 8 o'clock Central Daylight Time update. Top sustained winds are 110 miles per hour, higher gusts, of course, and the movement of George continues to be northwest at 10. Will George slow down and delay landfall? Well, we'll talk to Dr. Steve Lyons and get his analysis on that in just a moment. And the pressure, 963 millibars. Hurricane warnings remain in effect from Panama City, Florida, westward to Morgan City, Louisiana. Well, we have some crews live on the scene this morning. We have Kristen Dodd in Pensacola, Florida, Jim Cantori, Biloxi, Mississippi, and Bill Keneally in New Orleans, Louisiana. Let's get the latest out of Florida first with Kristen.
Well, thanks a lot, Rick. We are in the thick of things here at Pensacola. Behind me is Escambia Bay, and we have some very strong winds that are coming in even as far inland as we are. We just crossed about a 3 to 4 mile bridge heading out of Pensacola Beach, where the winds there were beginning to gust up over 54 miles an hour. That was our cue to get out of there. And plus, we also were seeing roads being flooded and washed away, and the county sheriff's deputy told us that if we did not leave within the hour, the last road out of the island would be washed over. So we have now moved a little bit farther inland, and as you can see behind me, we have very wicked waves coming in, even on the fairly wind-protected bay, much above your average glass-like chop along the bay here. The wind's also being bent significantly, and we have been getting gusts here at 51 miles an hour, and judging by the current wind and just some of the readings that we have been taking, sustained have been up over 30. That's been our, we haven't really dropped below 30 in the past 10 minutes or so. So we are seeing some of the bad weather begin to work its way in. Also coming through, heavy rain, and some of those outer rain bands could be producing some severe weather. So we're going to be watching these waters for the possible formation of waterspouts as well as tornadoes. Now farther to the west is Jim Cantori, and he is in Biloxi, Mississippi. Jim, how's it going there?
All right, Kristen, certainly not half the beating you're taking over there in Pensacola Beach, but as you can look behind me here, we are starting to see some of the waves increase in size. They're about 3 feet now, and what's happened as a result of that is we've seen a little bit of erosion, believe it or not. But what you've got to remember here, folks, is these waves aren't anything compared to what they could be, or what as Kristen is seeing, because of the barrier islands that exist about 12 miles offshore. They definitely help to break down the waves, so you may not very well see a tremendous amount of wave action here. Let me show you our storm cam shot. We'll take you up the beach and show you how the casinos are looking. And they're just sitting there on the beach waiting to deal with the brunt of this. And this could be a big problem, Rick. I'm telling you that right now, because if these casinos take a beating, basically the economy here is going to suffer for a while, unfortunately. The good news is the people are taking this very seriously. They've boarded up. They've made all the necessary precautions, and thank goodness with a little stall and movement of this morning, any last-minute folks will have a little bit more time to do so because of this thing because this thing has stalled out just a little bit. Another area very susceptible to hurricane problems is New Orleans, Louisiana. Let's go find out how things are going over there as we go to Bill Keneally live in New Orleans. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning to you, Jim. Again, weather deteriorating in a big way here. We're clouding over. The wind is picking up. The winds are probably gusting at times upwards of 30 to 35 miles per hour. I want to take you down Toulouse Street. Toulouse Street takes you all the way back to the Lake Pontchartrain I'm talking about. More importantly, look at the horizon line. There's still a little bit of blue there. Use your imagination, but there is some out there. As you get north and west of the lake, the weather in much better shape for the time being, but overhead some sprinkles, and also looking back towards the south and east, some rather ominous looking cloud cover. Just heard a report that some of the winds down in the Venice area, which is right at the mouth of the Mississippi River, now eclipsing 50 miles per hour at times. All 113 hurricane floodgates are now closed. What that means is a lot of roadways are closed as well. Sandbagging operations continue. The interstates are open, including I-10 and I-12, but they will likely get shut during the course of the afternoon hours, and it looks like the airport now is officially closed likewise. So that's how it stands now in New Orleans. Back to Rick.
All right, Bill, thanks for that report. And by the way, out of Louisiana, the state police have set up an 800 number for road and traffic information for state and federal highways. The troopers are saying don't call your local state police because they'll just refer you to the 800 number, which is 1-800-469-4828, 1-800-469-4828. And now over to our hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons. We're watching all the aspects of this storm. Now severe weather's coming into the cards, but first let's talk about storm surge. And of course the surge depends on the intensity and the track of Hurricane George, plus the local shape of the coastline.
Exactly, and what we're seeing here on this diagram is a potential storm surge, at least for the New Orleans area, for each of the categories of hurricanes. And right now we've got a Category 2, and so in some locations, not all, we could see storm surge as high as 10, maybe 15 feet. If we went to a Category 3, it could be 15 to 20. Of course, you can see it goes up rather astronomically there. So we definitely don't want this thing to get any stronger.
Steve, we go to the satellite picture right now, and of course it really depends on the exact area of landfall because the most intense conditions, the worst conditions, will be on that east and northeast side of the eye.
And because of that, if the track of the hurricane comes up this way, more toward Biloxi or toward Mobile, the New Orleans area would be on the northeast wind side of it. They could still get some minor storm surge, but would be very little. Whereas if it comes up where we expect it to come up, they get all of the storm surge right into that area. So it's a very critical time for them to see which way it's actually going to go. And right now we expect it to continue moving in that general northwest direction toward the mouth of the Mississippi.
Well, Steve, we have our first visible satellite pictures of the morning, and it is definitely an ominous scenario with the eye of the hurricane about 65 miles from the mouth of the Mississippi River right there, about 190 miles from New Orleans, and it would appear it's moving steadily towards the northwest.
That's right. The term stalling, we have to be careful of that word. Most people think stalling means it's absolutely gone stationary. It definitely hasn't done that yet. Tracking the recon fixes over the last few hours.
Rain, wind, and angry surf sweeps across the Pensacola Beach area. Water began flooding between homes and the Pensacola Beach on the highway. Police step in to restrict entry to the barrier islands and assist with evacuations. Good morning and welcome to Weather Center. I'm Mike Motley. The top story from the Gulf: Louisiana State Police are preparing to shut down a section of the interstate, which includes New Orleans. For the latest on Hurricane George, let's go to Rick Griffin in the Forecast Center.
Thanks, Mike. Hurricane George, north central Gulf of Mexico, moving steadily but slowly towards the north central Gulf Coast. In fact, as we go to our information frame, we see, after we check out this colorized satellite picture here, that the forward motion of George has gone down to 8 miles per hour. We'll talk to Dr. Steve Lyons in just a moment to see what additional impact that slower movement is going to have. The pressure, 963 millibars, top sustained winds, 110 miles per hour. The latest position as of 10 o'clock Central Daylight Time is 28.4 north and 88 degrees west. That puts the eye of George 175 miles southeast of New Orleans, Louisiana. Hurricane warnings remain in effect, and we just checked those out briefly. Morgan City, Louisiana, all the way to Panama City in the state of Florida, and we have hurricane watches and tropical storm warnings on either side of that hurricane warning location. Well, we have 3 Weather Channel live crews in the field along the Gulf Coast in the path of Hurricane George. We have Kristen Dodd in Pensacola. We have Jim Cantori in Biloxi and Bill Keneally in New Orleans. But first, we're going to go to the phone line. We have with us this morning State Police Lieutenant Colonel Ronnie Jones. Good morning to you, sir. Thanks a lot for joining us. We understand that a little later today, perhaps around noon, that interstates in the New Orleans area will be closed. Can you update us on that scenario?
Yeah, Rick, what we're looking at, we established times earlier this morning about 4 a.m. based on the current track and speed of the storm at that time. At noon, we were looking at closing interstates in the Orleans, Jefferson, and St. Tammany Parish areas. Obviously, with the slowing of the storm, we may have to reevaluate. That's going to be a call by local officials. We have a conference call at 10:30 with Office of Emergency Preparedness and all the local planning officials, and we may have to move that back. We certainly want to permit people to get out of harm's way, and traffic has picked up in the New Orleans area. We've got bumper-to-bumper traffic in the western part of Jefferson Parish all the way out I-10 up to Interstate 55. It is moving, and some people are making last-minute preparations to get out, but that window is going to be closing very quickly.
The interstate you're considering shutting down, I-55 on the western side of Lake Pontchartrain, is that one possibility?
That would come later in the day. Obviously, the conditions aren't going to deteriorate that quickly out there. We've got our first concern will be in the extreme southeast portion of the state, Plaquemine, St. Bernard, Lafourche, followed by Orleans, Jefferson, and St. Tammany.
Okay, thank you very much. That's Lieutenant Colonel Ronnie Jones with the Louisiana State Police with an update on the possibility that some of the interstates in the New Orleans metro area will be closing down around noon today. Hopefully we'll have him back for more information a little later on this morning or early this afternoon. Meanwhile, as I mentioned before, we have 3 Weather Channel Live crews in the field. Kristen is in Pensacola, Jim's in Biloxi, and Bill in New Orleans. Let's start with the latest from Pensacola and Kristen.
Well, Rick, the latest here is that the Sheriff's Department and the Pensacola Police Department are monitoring the winds very carefully, because they say that when we get the gusts up to 55 miles an hour, that is when they're going to just absolutely close down the bridges, both to and from the beaches area. We are in Pensacola. Escambia Bay is behind me. We're being protected a little bit from some of the stronger winds and also the waves by a couple of barrier islands, but you can see behind me how they are continuing to kick up and wash out over the seawall, and at times the spray even comes in as much as 20 yards or so, and so we're getting a little bit of wash and some of the spray coming over the roadways. The roadways over at the beaches are where we're seeing some of the bigger problems. The waves have already undercut a lot of the